Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. It's that time of week to catch up with Mike LaTulip. And Mike, we got another nice road victory for the Illini to talk about. 73-61 at Iowa. Holds the Hawkeyes to season low 61 points. I think a season low 36% shooting from the field as well. But what encouraged you most about a quad one road victory to end the regular season against Iowa?
I think you saw a team that didn't play the circumstances, right? And you had the 2 seed already locked up in the Big Ten tournament. Iowa had everything to play for with their NCAA tournament hopes on the line. And to this Illinois team, all that looked like it didn't matter, right? Like when you play the circumstances of, hey, what are the ramifications? What's going on? You can't focus on the task at hand and what the scout is and what personnel is and what you have to do possession by possession. So I thought I saw a team that was like, hey, we don't care who we play. We don't care where it is. We don't care, like I said, what the ramifications are. We're going to play hard. We're going to play connected, and we're going to have fun doing it. And that is the mentality that you need to have during the month of March. You just do. And that allows you to be able to go into a single elimination tournament, the Big Ten tournament or the NCAA tournament, and again, not worry about those things. Just worry about playing together. And I thought they did that.
Sometimes, Mike, I feel like us media make too big of a deal out of it, but you guys are human too. Sometimes, like, you guys aren't robots. Like, how hard is that to put those circumstances aside, to put aside going into the postseason that Illinois is not advanced to the Sweet 16 in 17, 18? Like, how hard is that as a player?
I think it's hard, but I think at the same time, it's when you're on the court, it's a lot different. Like, it's just, I don't know if you necessarily, I think the staff might feel it just because you're not on the floor. Although they have a lot that they're processing as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that's probably more for the fans and that's more for the media, because you feel like a lot of that is much more in your control when you're out there.
Yeah.
And granted, like there are things from game to game that aren't in your control, but especially for the players, you go into each game, and I'm just thinking about even this Iowa game. Like I don't think it crosses your mind as a player. You're like, we have the 2 seed locked up in the Big Ten tournament. It's hard to play that game in the moment. You just go out there and you're playing basketball. So, again, that mentality should help propel you when you get into these single elimination tournaments where, the margin for error is smaller and things are tense. Things are, can be tough to deal with. And so I think they'll find their way. But it was good to see them go in there and get that win.
Well, Iowa scored, as I said, just 61 points this game. This is a 15th ranked offensive efficiency in the country, according to Ken Palm here, Mike. How much did Illinois have to do with that?
I think the defense has been getting better. I think people were saying stuff to me after I did the film breakdown after the first Iowa game. And it was like, well, there were 85 points. And you can't always play the scoring output. You just can't. You have to look at shot quality. And I thought the shot quality that they forced against Iowa on the 24th was a low percentage shot quality. And Iowa made shots, especially in the first half. Because when you go back and watch this Iowa game, a lot of the same shots. It was a lot of the same shots. It was mid-range shots from Perkins. It was mid-range shots from Dix, from Sanford. They didn't make them. And you still, like I said, I mean, you can't play the result. You have to be able to look and see, okay, what is the quality of shot? Are they getting point-blank layups? Is your defense getting knifed to where teams are getting downhill, or, the roll man's able to roll behind the guy and drop coverage, and, there are no rotations, transition defense is bad. Like, those are all things that are recipes for disaster when you're trying to be a good defense. And I thought they've been solid in those areas. Now, there's still, I think, even in that Iowa game, Iowa had 61 points, and they could have had 49 if you got matched up in transition a few times, especially with Sanford. So I think they're trending in the right direction. I think since March started, which I know is a 3-game sample size, but it's a 3-game sample size against Wisconsin, Purdue, and Iowa. And their adjusted defensive efficiency is 18th in the country against those teams. And that's encouraging. It's encouraging when you move into the tournament and, we've talked about this offense and how I think they can play with anybody on that end, and that's going to keep you in games. But defensively, if they find that if they figure that out, which I think they have been, now you're kind of putting it all together.
Yeah, and I agree with you. With the Iowa game at home, I thought their defense was better, even though they gave up 85. I thought the Wisconsin game on the road, they gave up 83, but the defense was better as well. What is the key? Is it just communication? Is it just focus in transition? Because Iowa probably could have had 10, 15 more points in transition if they shot well.
Well, the key overall is the effort, because I think I'll even just break it down by, when they played Iowa the first time, they stopped switching.
Mm-hmm.
When they played Iowa this time, there were instances where they had to switch, but it's just talk it out, communicate, and play with effort. And all that stuff, we've talked about it before, it covers up the defensive mistakes. It just does. It always has. It doesn't matter your coverage. Like, coverage doesn't matter if you're not giving the requisite amount of effort or you don't have that bite that we've talked about. I've felt like the past couple games you've seen them play with some bite, and it sounded like Brad Underwood last week was not happy with how they ended that game against Purdue. And it's that, again, we talk about not playing the opponent. There's no, it's Purdue, like, we gave it our best shot, but they're a really good team. And they are, there's no question, but you could have won that game. And it was the 50-50 balls, having bite at the end of the game that, in my opinion, lost you it, coupled with Purdue stepping up and making big shots. So the effort, the communication has to be like top level when you head into March, and especially in transition. Like, that is where I think it's most evident. When the shot goes up, I know this is a good offensive rebounding team, but when the shot goes up, you have to find a way to definitely make an effort on the glass, but you can't have anyone in no man's land getting back in transition, meaning you're not attacking the glass and you're not getting back. Like, if your free throw line extended or higher, you have to get back, and then it's on you to be barking out orders, because you're the one that is fullback, as we used to call it, where you're all the way back and can see everything and point guys in the right direction. And there were times where, like, the camera panned over in transition, and you saw Marcus Damask after he made a shot. He's pointing, he's yelling, he's talking, and that's what they need from those guys, man. Like, you need that. But it's, hey, we don't have a man in transition, because that happened too. Like, at one point, Terrence Shannon, ball went into the basket, and he started, or I guess it was a miss, and he ran back to Tony Perkins.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have a man in transition. You just have to talk it out, and then you'll figure out your matchups on that possession. So he runs to Tony Perkins when somebody's already guarding him, and that leaves a Peyton Sanford on the right wing for a three. So those things I think you have to cut out. But overall, the mentality, I think, and the approach has changed on that end, and that's the first step.
Terrence Shannon is having one of the best scoring seasons in Illinois history. It's going to be top 10. One of the few guys that averages more than 20 points in a game for Illinois. I mean, Kofi had 21 in 2022, but Terrence is going to top that. But his defense, man, like that shined me more than the 25 points he scored. And he was a terror again in transition. But what he did to Tony Perkins, what he did in some of those chase down blocks and big moments, Mike, what stands out to you most about him as a defender right now in this season?
I think the thing that stands out the most is how much paranoia he creates. And it's his size, it's his speed, it's gaps that you think are gaps are not gaps when he's around. He creates the illusion of space, I think, as well. And the best way that I can describe that is Josh Dix in the second half comes off a ball screen on the right, or I guess the left wing, coming towards the free throw line to shoot a pull-up. And when he comes off that screen, Terrence gets hung up for a second. Peyton Sanford sets a pretty good screen. Terrence gets hung up. Dix takes two dribbles, and after that second dribble, he does this glance down to his side. And that glance down to your side, for anyone that has played basketball, it's to assess and gauge how much space you have to be able to take that shot. And he assesses and he looks. And at that point, when he looked, Terrence was still wrapping around Sanford. Okay. And when he rises up, the illusion of space, you don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
And Terrence is able to track it down and block the shot. And he does it in transition. again, just another superhuman
Yeah.
block that he had, where, Kendrick Nunn was really good at that too. Just when they get their feet right and they can time it up. I mean, again, that was on Josh Dix too. And there was another one that I think was a goaltending, and Josh Dix got to be like, I can't shake this guy. I truly believe that, when he is dialed in on the ball, I don't think there's like 3 better defenders in the country, let alone the conference. I think his ability to move his feet, his closing speed, just his feel, I think defensively, he doesn't bite a ton on shot fakes either. I think he's disciplined to couple that with his athleticism. He's an all Big Ten defender to me, and we'll see if it shakes out that way. But honestly, I don't really care who ends up being on that team, because he should be on it.
Yeah. We're recording this right before the awards get announced, just for people on the podcast. So, it's gonna be interesting to see what comes of those awards. Mike, Quincy Gary, 14 points, 13 rebounds, his first double-double since the Northwestern overtime game. That's a streak of 11 games. He had 6 double-doubles in the 8 games prior to that. What does this type of Quincy Gary playing this well mean for Illinois?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it, right? 3 of his last 4 games in double figures, and maybe even more importantly, 3 of his last 4 games, 3 offensive rebounds or more.
Yeah.
And that's what I think really triggers things for Quincy Gary, is just the intensity, the effort. He's all of 6'8", and he's not at his best when he's playing like he's 6'3".
Yeah.
Or when he's playing like he's 6'4". When Quincy Gary plays like he's 6'8", he's really, really tough, because he does have a lot of length, because he is really strong, and he does finish with a lot of strength as well. Like he when he straight line drives and you run him off the line, then he becomes a confrontational driver. He's really, really good. And, I think certainly the last couple of games, he's found his 3-point shot a little bit. And that just psychologically for college basketball players, that makes you feel pretty good in other aspects of your game. But I just look at Quincy, and when you go into March, you have Terrence Shannon, you have Marcus Damask, you have Coleman Hawkins, but it cannot be all on them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you're going to have 2-3 guys that turn in top level performances every single round. You're going to have a Quincy Guerrier. You're going to have a Justin Harmon. You're going to have a Dane Danger, Luke Goody. Like, someone is going to have to step up at some point in postseason play in a given game that's going to help get this team over the top. And I think Quincy is a prime candidate for that. And like, oftentimes these teams that make a Final Four run, that contend for a national championship, they have really good fourth guys.
Yeah.
Right. Like, there isn't this massive fall off. It's not Maryland, right? It's not Maryland who goes out into the portal, goes and gets Jordan Geronimo, and they're like, cool, that's it. We have our core. We have Young. We have Scott. We have Reese. No, it's all these other guys that help push you over the top. And Quincy, like I said, has as good a chance as anybody to have a really, really key performance here in March.
Dane Danger made an impact on a game again, Mike, and first 14 Big Ten games since January 1st. Dainja had 2.9 points, 1.9 rebounds, and 6 minutes per game. Last 5 games, 7 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 13 minutes per game. What's been the key to him leaving a mark on this team and in the rotation?
Yeah, you touched on the timeline there, because since January 1st to February 21st, he had 3 games over 10 plus minutes. Yeah. And now he's had 4 of his last 5 games playing 10 plus minutes. And it's defense, and it's defense, and it's defense, and it's defense, and it's activity, and it's defense, and it's activity, and it's defense.
He knows it too, Mike.
That's it. And he's figured that out. Like, I see a guy that's figured that out. And I like, it's no, discredit to Dain for not having that figured out earlier in the season, because, you play what really is your freshman season last season, because you didn't really have a true one at Baylor, and he scored at a pretty good rate for a freshman. And now you come into this year, you add a little bit more talent, and you're trying to find your way. And it's not instantaneous for some of these guys. You got to learn the hard way. And he's absolutely figured that out. He's figured out, like, hey, man, what does this team need? right? Because when you look at how this defense has improved, I'm not saying it's all because of Dane Danger, but certainly there are parallels there where he comes into the game, man, we're not defending the way that we're capable of. Let me help out on that end. Let me be active. Another point that I'll make, last 5 games, 10 offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
It's the activity in the defense. And honestly, that it's a great lesson for all players, because any player that's a role player beyond like a Terrence Shannon, a Marcus Damask, right? Coleman Hawkins, defense and activity, rebounding, get you on the court. Period.
Yeah, can I throw this at you too? Because I said this yesterday with Derek, and I wonder what you think of it. Dainja is capable of running. You're capable of running offense through Dane Danger, but for this team, I feel like he's better when his offense comes through offensive rebounds. So when it comes through the effort, because the turnovers happen, you're going to get turnovers with Dain. Do you think that too? Like, I just feel like that's the way he can really get his offenses. Just some of those roles, being an open passer when he got Damask and Shannon, and just getting some of those offensive rebounds. I feel like that's when he's at his best, because people want Dain for his offense, which meant when he gets defense and those rebounds, that's when he's really valuable.
Yeah, it's a team that, if you want to give one of their weaknesses defensively, it's interior post defense, and he's help them out in that area. But I think you're absolutely right. I think everyone, like I said, has to find their role on any given team. And 2022-23 is different than 2023-24. It's just changed for him. I think you could play through him a little more last year, but you're too talented offensively this year with Damask and with Shannon and with other guys that you maybe would want to go to first, that for Dain, he can get production through osmosis. He can't. He can come into a game and it's the quality of the 8 points, 5 rebounds he gets, right? Because he can do it either way. You can throw it into him and he'll eventually get 8 points, 5 rebounds, or he can just play hard and be active and get 8 points, 5 rebounds. I mean, but the latter is what helps this team, to your point, right? Like, that is the way, which still, when you look on KenPom, as far as like usage, I think he's still second on the team.
That's right.
Like when he's in there, but it's how much value you're providing in those minutes. And it's not always, those statistics aren't always the same. They're not weighed the same when you look at like, okay, well, he had 10 and 4 in this game and 10 and 4 in this game. It's like, okay, well, what were the turnovers, right? And another thing I'll mention too for Dain, how about, 8 for 11 from the free throw line, his last 11 attempts. I think he started the season 0 for 9 or whatever it was. So it's a massive improvement.
Take you behind the scene. Wagner looked at us when he got 2 free throws, and he asked us, how many is he making? And I confidently said, he'll make 1. Like, I wouldn't have said that 2 months ago.
Yeah, he's you look at, I think early in the season, he was in like the 20s and 30s from the free throw line. And part of that is I think you're managing a lot because, again, expectations coming into the year, and man, maybe I'm not playing as much as I thought I was going to. And now you got so much in your head that now there's no surprise that 8 for 11 from the free throw line has coincided with knowing his role more, knowing what to expect, eliminating all the other distractions and just saying, hey, what do I got to do for this team? And then you can, once you're confident in that role, you can play confidently. Yeah. And it's all kind of tied together for Dane Danger. And once again, just like we talked about with Quincy Gary, it's tying together at the right time.
Mike, I want to discuss with you kind of looking back at the regular season, look ahead to the postseason. We'll kind of preview the Big Ten tournament. We'll draft some of the teams here. But the rotation late to wrap up the Iowa game. The rotation late, Guerrier, Rogers on the court. Goody just played 9 minutes. Justin Harmon struggled again for a second straight game, only played 15 minutes. I think Brad Underwood is probably going to ride hot hands at some point, but we've talked about like Guerrier, Rogers, or those guys you go close with, and those guys were on the closing lineup. So what did you think of that?
Yeah, I thought they had huge contributions that led to that. I thought Ty, he was great on the glass all game, same with Quincy. But Ty eventually in the second half figured out, I got a 5-man on me again. I got to go to work. I got to go to work. And that's what's going to help this team. And he did that. And now Harmon still came in, I think, with 2:05 left for Rogers. And people got to realize with Harmon, that's a almost 91% free throw shooter.
Correct.
So that is a very, very solid weapon to have at the end of the game. The question for me just becomes, who's the inbounder late? Went back to the football alignment late at 1.2. But I think the difference with that kind of football spread formation that they have is earlier with Penn State, it felt like they were sending everyone down and bringing Damask and Shannon back to the ball. Now they're doing that, and they have a third outlet coming back, which we had talked about on the film, and that's been great to see, and that's usually Coleman, because you need a big target for that as well. But I'll be curious to see who they put in those different spots when you get into the NCAA tournament, Big Ten tournament, and it's late. Like, is it going to be Damask taking it out? I think we saw Hawkins take it out a little bit at Maryland when you closed out the game. So, it'll be interesting to see, but I think it should give Quincy and Ty a lot of confidence, because you don't get a ton of confidence sitting for the last 10 minutes of the game, because they're in your mind, naturally, you're kind of like, well, I guess there's a reason. Right. And I think they've responded just like you kind of figured they would. They value the right things. They're about the right things. And it's yet another thing that's going to help them late, but they've certainly done a better job of closing things out.
This episode of the Illini Inquirer Podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. What's the first thing you'd do if you had an extra hour in your day? Man, that sounds like a gift, doesn't it? I'd go for a walk, maybe read, like an actual book, not tweets and sports articles. That's stuff I would do. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is know what's important to you and to make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/Illini today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Illini. All right, Mike, 31 games in the books. That'll do it for the regular season. Illinois goes 23-8, 14-6 in the Big Ten. Second place finish, number 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Barring a great run in the Big Ten tournament or a lot of movement, they're going to be the number 4 seed probably in the NCAA tournament, according to most people. We'll see. But how would you grade the regular season? I'm doing this exercise with Derek and Joey as well as we do a roundtable to wrap up the regular season. If you had to put a letter grade on the regular season, what would you do?
Yeah, I think it's an A minus. And part of that is you have to look at the starting point. And if you go back to May, there was a really good chance you weren't going to have Terrence Shannon. There was a really good chance you were going to have Coleman Hawkins. You get them both back. And on top of that, what a job, man. Just like, I don't even want to call it around the fringes, because the contributions you've gotten from the 3 transfers that you've brought in have been incredible. And like Marcus Damask, he would be first. He's first team all Big Ten to me. I don't know. Again, don't know what this is recorded before that comes out. Whether he's first team all Big Ten or not, he's first team all Big Ten in my book, because he's been a huge matchup issue for the league. He's helped keep Illinois afloat when Terrence Shannon was out to even have a chance to make a run at that Big Ten title. And then Quincy and Justin have been outstanding. I think Justin in particular as well, where having depth and having a guy that can come off the bench and be explosive at times and help finish games. And you're not just rolling with your starting 5 because it's, hey, that's just the 5 guys we have. You have other guys that can come in. Now, the only reason I would say like A minus is some of the late game stuff. Yeah. I don't know if the Penn State game is enough to knock you down like a half a letter grade, but I just think that the defensive stuff too at certain points. Now I'll say again, I think it's gotten a lot better. All of that factors in, but we talk about the NCAA tournament all the time and how everyone wants to make it the litmus test for the entire season. And you just can't discredit the body of work for the whole season itself, because like, once again, Brad Underwood, the staff, and these players have turned in just an incredible Big Ten season. And and they deserve to be recognized for it because it's been a hell of a past 4 or 5 years.
Listen, there were some missed opportunities here. Like there were some down moments. Every team has those. But I went with A-, Mike, because if you'd have told me before the season that this was going to be the second place team in the Big Ten, 14 Big Ten wins, I know it's a down league, and that they'd be a number 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, I would have thought that's the higher side of what this team could accomplish, maybe a little bit more. Maybe they could win the Big Ten share of the title with Purdue, and they were close to that, right? They had a chance. But we also got to acknowledge their best player was arrested and charged with a serious crime midway through the season. And that's going through, you got to go through all this process, but they handled that. And the locker room doesn't seem like we knew people would not be happy playing. Like, look at Dane Danger right now. Like, Dain could have been pouting, and now he's making a big impact. The freshmen could be pouting. They don't seem to be doing that. They're ready to play. So I think this is one of Brad Underwood's better coaching jobs at Illinois, just all the things they've had to handle, all the turnover, and this team is playing well at the end of the season. We've seen them compete with the best in the country. I haven't seen them beat the best in the country yet, but I just think it's one of the better teams in the country, one of the top 15 teams in the country, and how could you not have an A- grade on something like that?
I agree. I think it's all of this is very emblematic of the program that Brad Underwood's created, because even little tropes and storylines from this season have shown themselves in seasons prior, right? The Dane Danger staying ready, being able to step up in big moments. How about Coleman Hawkins, right? Back when they won a Big Ten title regular season, a month and a half before that game where he has 9 points, 11 rebounds, he's playing 2 minutes against Wisconsin.
Yep.
And he sticks through it. And now he's seeing the fruits of his labor. And Dain, same type of thing, seeing the fruits of his labor. How about the fact that when you go back to 2021, when they were a 1 seed, how many guys were cycling in and out of that lineup with COVID, and this guy's out for this game, and they held down the fort. They figured out a way. They ended up a 1 seed. In 22, you're missing Curbelo for the first 13 games, whatever that was, the beginning of the season, 16 games, whatever it was, that stretch, and you still are able to, let's be honest, reincorporate a guy that can be difficult to reincorporate because of what he brings to the table, and you still find a way to figure it out and win a Big Ten regular season title. Or, it's like we've seen this year, like last year was maybe, you call it maybe an aberration compared to the norm, but this is what we've grown accustomed to seeing with Illinois basketball, is that with Brad Underwood, with the staff, with the players, like they find a way to piece these things together. And this year I thought was incredibly emblematic of that.
So just how do you feel, Mike, about this team entering the postseason? What's your confidence level on them?
Like, I feel really good. I think I talked about it weeks ago. I think it was after the Minnesota game when you say, hey man, I'd rather be the team that needs to get a little bit more bite defensively, as opposed to being the team going into March, like a Virginia or like Maryland's not going to the tournament, but some of these other teams that are like, shoot, man, let's figure out how to score. That stuff you can't just throw pixie dust on and say, oh man, we're all of a sudden a really good offense. So that encourages me, because in a matchup game, in games where you can run into like John Gross in the Sweet 16 back for Ohio when he played Michigan and they just hit 14 threes or 17 threes, whatever it was. Like when you run into a team like that can do that, you have an offense that can stem the tide. Like you have enough talented players that can help you stay in games, take leads in games. And now it's on the defense to limit that and be able to close out games. And they're building in that direction. I talked about it, right? This month of March, albeit 3-game sample size, but against 3 really good teams, 18th in adjusted defensive efficiency. And one thing I think too that goes a little bit overlooked, the rate at which teams have made 3-point shots on this team is like insane.
Yeah.
It is. I wouldn't go as far to call it like an anomaly, but I don't think I've ever seen a team, and I'm talking about this is from February 1st.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever seen a team that is 4th in the country in forcing basically the lowest amount of 3-point attempts, right? Like their 3-point rate defensively is 4th lowest in the country. They do not give up threes. But in that same period of time, teams are shooting like 42% from three on them. It's crazy. And if you're not a team that gets in rotation, and
Right.
you're like these teams making 42% of their threes on limited attempts it's wild. And honestly, I think it's due for a course correct and it's coming at the right time. So all that I think factors in. But look, it's matchups, and you have a weapon in the half court offensively that's as good as anybody's in the country outside of maybe Zach Edey. Like I think Damask is that good of a weapon. I think you have one of the best, if not the best weapon in transition in the country. But all that ties into, okay, how many stops are we getting so that we can get those rebounds and get out and go? I saw a team against Iowa. I thought Coleman Hawkins' effort on the glass to start that game was unbelievable.
Great.
Like the pursuit, ripping it down. This is mine, right? And then we'll get out and we'll run. We'll take a 10-0 lead because we'll punch you in the mouth. But they punch him in the mouth. It was still pretty conservative defense, right? Because it's drop. Now, it was good bite getting over screens and all that. But all of it comes down to, man, when this shot goes up, boom, hit a body and pursue, get it, and let's go. And that mentality, all of that just has me just really optimistic. Granted, single elimination tournament, anything can happen. But right now, I think you're playing. If you'd asked me 4 weeks ago, I don't think I would have been feeling as good as I felt right now, especially after seeing them play Wisconsin, play Purdue, play Iowa, and turn in some pretty good performances.
The other thing Illinois do, you said the course correction on 3-point shooting for opponents. They're also do some bracket luck at some point. Just a break, not having the number 5 team in the KenPom is the number 5 seed that you have to play in the second round, not having top 10 KenPom team is your 8 seed that you got to play. Or how about playing a double-digit seed in the second round? Something like another upset happening elsewhere. So Brad Underwood feels do that a little bit as well. But let's talk about the Big Ten tournament here, Mike. Illinois will play Friday. Go ahead.
I'll make one more point.
Yeah.
I'll make one more point because, and I promise I won't ramble about this, but I always want to remind people.
Yeah.
I always want to remind people. Okay. Look, all the talk about the Mountain West Conference, right, over the years, where the Mountain West never does anything in the NCAA tournament. Okay. And then San Diego State does what they do last year by going to a national championship. And what happens? Now Mountain West can be a 7-bid league.
That's right.
But if you look at it, Virginia gives San Diego State a gift by just throwing the ball in the backcourt and getting picked off and having Furman hit a 3. So now San Diego State plays Furman in the second round instead of Virginia and advances and finds their way into a national championship when they could have easily lost in the second round to Virginia. Like that's why this tournament, when you go back to 2022, okay, while every other 4 seed and 5 seed is playing Richmond, St. Mary's, and New Mexico State, you're playing Houston.
That's right.
So the whole narrative changes if you're any other 4 seed in 2022, because you probably win those other 3 games.
If Illinois beats Loyola in 2021, their path to a Final Four.
Oregon State in the next round.
Yeah, to Elite Eight was great. I mean, you had Houston in the Elite Eight. That would have been a tough game. But, yeah, you had Oregon State in the next round. It's like,
yeah, I mean, look, you got to play who's in front of you for sure. I think 2022 was for sure the year where it was like you saw the draw and you're like, my God. I mean, Houston was, I think, second in KenPom.
Yeah.
And you had them as a 5 seed. So all you got to do here's the thing. All the second weekend talk, all of that, you know how you guarantee yourself to not make it to the second weekend is to not make the NCAA tournament. And for Illinois basketball, hasn't been an issue.
That's right.
For years. Okay. So like I was there. I went to an NCAA tournament. We were 7 seed, probably should have made a Sweet 16. I was also there when we were on the bubble sophomore year, on the bubble junior year. It's a miserable place to be, and you haven't been there. So
keep getting bites.
I digress.
Keep getting bites at the apple. All right, Ohio State or Iowa in the Big Ten tournament quarterfinal on Friday. That's going to be a good 7-10 game. 2 teams that are on the bubble. Ohio State has played itself, at least in the mix here. They got to make a run. Iowa's got to make a run after you kind of burst their bubble on Sunday. But what do you make of either of those matchups, Mike? I know some people don't like playing a team 3 times. I think it's a great matchup for Illinois against Iowa. I think that's why they won 2 times so far. And Ohio State is playing well, but Illinois handled them pretty pretty nicely in Columbus. So what do you make of either of those matchups?
Now, you could talk about not playing a team 3 times, but didn't Penn State play 3 times last year?
Correct.
Right? So none of that matters. And even my 5th year of eligibility at Wright State, we had, it was the beginning of the conference tournament. Obviously, mid-major level, you have to win the conference tournament to go to the NCAA tournament. We were the last game of the day. We were the 4 seed playing the 5 seed Northern Kentucky. And by the time we played our game, 1, 2, and 3 were all gone. And you know what happened? We played Northern Kentucky. Northern Kentucky beat us twice in the regular season. You know what Northern Kentucky did? They beat us again because it just wasn't a good matchup for us. Yeah. So that doesn't matter. What I see is, last time Iowa and Ohio State played, they only played 1 time this year, and it was in Iowa City, and Iowa won by 2. And in that game, you had Dix, you had Sanford, you had Perkins, all scored 15 plus. I mean, they turned in a pretty solid offensive performance. But for Iowa, it's like, what Perkins are you getting? Because the Perkins I saw that had the deal with Terrence Shannon the other night didn't look like a good one. And Ohio State, the way they've been playing, they've always had the talent, right? Like, they've always had it. And now, you fire the coach and guys start buying in, which would drive me crazy if I was Chris Holtman, where I was like, hey, where was this? And now you come into a tournament where, and I mentioned in the month of March where Illinois is like 18th in adjusted defensive efficiency, Ohio State's 3rd.
Yeah.
So like that has been the step for them. Like, they have been guarding much better definitely better than last year, but certainly better than earlier in the year.
To be honest with you, the Buckeyes scare me more than the Hawkeyes, just because I think they're more talented, right? I agree. Jamison Battle is capable of going off on one of his nights. They got tough guard and Bruce Thornton. Akpara is a nice defender. Like, they got more talent than Iowa athletically and a lot of scorers on that team. So I think Ohio State scares me a little bit more than Iowa.
No, I agree. I totally agree. I think when you look at Roddy Gale and Bruce Thornton and Jamison Battle and Akpara has been really good for them. You still have Zed Key. Like honestly, it's one of the more, it's probably like a top 5 or 6 talented team in the conference. And now they're starting to play with some purpose, and that can be really scary. But can they do it again? Because they already did it last year in the Big Ten tournament where they kind of made their run.
Right.
I think, honestly, I think this is a good matchup for Illinois either way. I really do. And there were people talking about the bottom side of the bracket as if it was like they didn't want to be in the bottom side of the bracket. I would much rather be in the bottom side of the bracket. I thought this is much more set up for Illinois to make a run to the championship game than certainly than it has been in recent years.
And Mike, I want to bring this up because I know you like to talk about it, but I'd rather win games here than get rest going into the postseason. What do you think?
I would agree, Jeremy. I think it's easy to look and play the results of the past 3 years because we've had this like delineation of, well, the COVID year happened, and then every year after the COVID year, or I guess since COVID, you've had, Illinois won the regular season title, Illinois won the regular season title, or a Big Ten tournament title, and then lost to Loyola. You had Iowa win the Big Ten tournament title, lose to Richmond, Purdue loses to FDU. And then we can look at that and be like, well, this is just the way it is, and you don't want to advance far. But look at literally almost every year before that. And I think we talked about this on the pod, right? 2019, Michigan State wins it, they go to the Final Four. 2018, Michigan wins it, they go to the national championship. 2017, Michigan wins it in practice jerseys, they go to a Sweet 16 or Elite 8. I mean, you can keep going back on down the line. Wisconsin goes to a national championship, right? Wisconsin, again, 24. I think Michigan State was 2014, went to a Final Four. Like, we have much more of a body of work for the Big Ten Conference winning the Big Ten title than just the last 3 years. And if anything, if you're playing percentages and odds, win it this year because odds are it's going to revert back to how it was.
Yep.
And so all that factors in. But if you think that for a second that crosses the minds of players or the staff where it's like, hey, let's play funky lineups or let's play a funky defense and give us a lesser chance of winning so that we can rest for another single elimination tournament. That's what I'm saying. You have 2 guaranteed games left.
Yep.
Right. None of this stuff is, and if you play a game where you're like, hey, we're going to concede and let a team beat us so we can rest up for the tournament, you just cut your games in half. You cut the rest of your season in half. So that's all I'll say on that. It's a ridiculous way to think.
Yeah, you got to be competitive. You want to play well. I think all those things matter. And listen, Illinois fans have seen the flip side of it. You got knocked out first round of each of the last two Big Ten tournaments, and you didn't play well in your first games. Chattanooga probably should have beat you, and then last year Arkansas beat you. I know Arkansas is a better team, but just didn't work out for them. All right, Mike, let's look ahead to the Big Ten tournament. Let's do a little Big Ten tournament draft here. So we're going to take each of us is going to take one of the top 4 seeds. I think we know the 2 teams we're going to pick. One team from the 5 and 10 seed and one team from the 11-14 seed. If you get a win, you get a point. At the end of this thing, we'll see where it is. But it's just an excuse for us to talk about some of these teams that will go far. So do you want to pick first or do you want me to pick first? It's who wants to be the
I'll pick first.
Okay, go ahead. Who you got?
Illinois.
Whoa! He did it. Why Illinois over Purdue?
Again, I'll be honest, I like their path better. I think you're going to have a Minnesota or Michigan State team who, honestly, I think if you're going to ask me, I'm more scared of Michigan State and Minnesota than Ohio State and Iowa. Both of them compared to those. Like those would be, if I rank them 1 to 4, those would be the top 2 teams. And I think Minnesota gave them a fight in Mackey. Michigan State gave them a fight in Mackey. And you're going to have a team coming off of a win, which granted you are for Ohio State and Iowa as well. But I just think, on any given night for this Purdue team, you just never know. And same goes for Illinois, obviously. But then if Purdue ends up winning that game, you either have a Wisconsin team that's won 2 in a row, or you have a Northwestern team that's been a thorn in your side for a while. So that's my thought process behind it. I may have just gifted you a few wins, but I don't know. I just like Illinois' path better.
Those are like Matt Hasselbeck vibes. I'm taking the ball and scoring on this one, just taking it, going Illinois right away. You got all the endeared all the Illini fans there. I will take Purdue. I just think they were by far the best team in the Big Ten. Yeah, I agree with some of these teams can have given them some trouble, but they got Zach Edey. Braden Smith's the best point guard in the Big Ten. And if Fletcher Lawyer makes shots, man, this team could go really far in the NCAA tournament too. So I will take Purdue. We'll go with Snake. I'll go 5 through 10. I don't like the way Wisconsin's playing. I hate that I'm picking this, Mike, but they're playing well. I think this week matters to them a lot.
Clip it from Mike Woodson.
Their coach is the coach, Mike. He's doing the job. I'm going Indiana. I'm gonna go the Hoosiers. I like their side of the listen. I like Nebraska. I don't think Penn State or Michigan's got a chance against Indiana. I say that, and I felt terrible about Indiana a couple of weeks ago. But Nebraska's a good team, but not as good away from home. I just think Indiana's gonna be motivated. They'll have the game under their belts if they get there. So give me the Hoosiers. I'm going all the Indiana State teams here with Purdue and Indiana. Who you got?
Is Indiana due
for a loss? Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at. I don't know. You're gonna likely Penn State wins that game.
Yes.
And you want to talk about playing a team 3 times. Penn State to this point has swept Indiana. So
shows you how much research I've done on this, Mike.
Well, we'll see. I'm just saying, but again, my knee-jerk reaction, that is a team that's trending in the right direction. So
Khalil Ware's playing so well.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all for that. So now I have to pick one of these
5 through 10. Yeah.
5 through 10. Okay. Jeez.
Do you double down on the Purdue and pick one of the Michigan State?
No, I think I pick Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah. Give me Wisconsin.
Playing a little bit better at the end of the year there. A little bit better. All right, 11 through 14. You got to pick one of those teams, Mike. I'm guessing neither of us pick Michigan.
Well, here's the thing. I would have to do more research on this as well, but I know for a fact that pretty much every year since they went to 14 teams, someone makes it out of this game and wins their next one.
It gets to Friday, yeah.
Yeah, we were one of them back in 2015.
Yeah.
Last year was Ohio State, I think.
It happens a lot. You're right.
Give me Penn State.
I was going to say that'd probably be the team I feel best about.
Yeah.
Maryland just can't score like that. Maryland.
Yeah, I'm going to say I looked at Maryland and then I realized how disappointed I'd be in myself when they have 16 points at halftime against Rutgers.
Oh God. but I can't see Rutgers winning 2 games. You know what I mean?
No, I think that's definitely how we got to look at it.
I gotta go Maryland just because they have the most talented player of that team, like of that breadth. So they need Jameer Young to go on a heater. Like I do think Wisconsin, Maryland could maybe muck it up a little bit. Rutgers, they had that little spurt there with Jeremiah Williams, but it's gone terribly since then. So I will grit my teeth and go Maryland.
I'm gonna text you at 6:20.
What is the score at halftime?
Time and say how you feeling? How you feeling about the Maryland pick when they've
not good at all?
When they're 5 for 22 from the field in the first half.
Michigan State is the 8 seed is insane to me. Like you called that, Mike. You called that. Maybe not this bad, but you said, yeah, I don't believe them as a top 5 team in the country. That's just been a terrible season.
I went back. I think it was June. I went back and looked at the text. You know what? Just for a little behind the scenes for the audience here.
And I liked them because they had the best. I thought they had the best guard play in the Big Ten.
Let me pull this up. I'll tell you exactly what was said.
I was an AJ Hogard fan. Like Tyson Walker's had a pretty good year, of course, but Jaden Akins has not been very good. And you knew the value of Joey Hauser. I overlooked it.
I texted on June 8th at 11:36 a.m. and I said, just out of the blue, unprovoked, just stewing over here. I'm so irrationally angry about the preseason MSU hype. And then I said, I cannot wait to be vindicated.
There it is.
And you said, I think they're going to be good. I like the roster more than Indiana's last season. So and I saw that and I said, I'm speaking sheerly from a top 5 nationally preseason perspective. And I said, the big thing is Hauser's gone. He was wildly underrated. Their leading rebounder, losing him. You're adding no one from the portal and somehow vaulting up that much nationally is nuts. Because we saw it again. This isn't a Michigan State thing. It was a North Carolina thing the year before.
Yep.
I was all over that.
Indiana.
You got an 8-9 seed in North Carolina that makes it to a national championship game or Final Four. And then you say, hey, they went to a national championship or Final Four. Again, it's a macro discussion about the NCAA tournament and projecting out to the following year based off of 2-3 weeks in March and going, okay, 8-9 seed in the NCAA tournament, return basically everyone from that 8-9 seed, and now they're the number 1 team in the country. How does that make any sense? Everybody returned from an 8-9 seed is now the number 1 team in the country, like they did with UNC. And what? Did they make the NCAA tournament? No, they didn't. So it's the same thing with Michigan State. But again, what is it? January, February, Izzo? We'll see. I could totally see if they sneak in and they're if they lose this game to Minnesota, there's a good chance they're like a play-in 11 seed.
Yeah. Oh, if I'm a 7 seed or a 6 seed, I'm terrified of Michigan.
No, I would not want to play them. I still stand by that. Preseason hype was ridiculous, but I would absolutely not want to play them in the postseason.
How does the vindication feel, Mike?
It feels pretty good, but honestly, and it's nothing against the Spartans. They fell into just my theory, right? Nothing to do with them, their program, Tom Izzo, none of that. This is a theory I've had for years where we're like, who's going to be the team that gets overhyped in the preseason based off of hype from the NCAA tournament? Yeah. Because again, my main point with Michigan State, when you looked at it, including their Sweet 16 run last year, they were 9-9 to finish the year. And then you lost arguably your best player, in my opinion. Yeah. So I don't know.
It's a really good call.
I digress.
It's the best time of year, Mike. Looking forward to it. We'll catch up later this week. Film room, we're going to do one. Mike's going to do a scout on whoever Illinois plays in the Big Ten tournament, so be on the lookout for that. Late Thursday, early Friday. We'll have that up for you to get prepared for the Big Ten tournament. One of my favorite events to cover. I think Minneapolis will do a good job. It's a little bit of an outpost for everybody, but once you get there, it's a really good city. Mike, can't wait to catch up next week. We'll talk about the NCAA tournament and Illinois' matchup then, man.
Looking forward to it, man.